Once small animals reach adulthood, they stop growing. In contrast, once small animals reach adulthood, they stop growing. In contrast, even plants that are thousands of years old continue to grow new needles, add new roots, and produce cones and new flowers, almost as if parts of their body remained forever young. The secrets of plant growth are regions of tissues that can produce cells that later develop into specialized tissues. Solar energy. Because it is expensive. Solar energy is an excellent source of supplying power to homes and companies, and by utilizing solar power, you are not merely protecting the environment from becoming polluted, but also you are saving the rest of the Earth's natural resources. Capturing solar energy does not contribute to any pollution and does not harm the atmosphere. One of the factors why many individuals are still hesitant to make use of solar power is because it is expensive. Living room is a most used part that withholds most of the traffic coming in and out of the house. It is highly recommended that the flooring should be strong enough that it can endure on such a maintenance done with your furniture or to increasing and decreasing ratio of visitors. For the purpose, you can offer hardwood flooring. Being classy and sophisticated in look, it is the perfect choice for your living room whenever you are remodeling your home. categories. If bonus or incentive pay schemes work so well for chief executives and bankers, why does everyone not get them? After all, many jobs involve making important decisions or taking risks. Is there anything about corporate decisions and financial risk that makes these categories of work special in terms of how they need to be incentivized and rewarded? World population growing in the United States. How quickly is the world's population growing in the United States and other developed countries? The current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of 3% per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within lifetime. This is what needs to happen on climate change. The world needs to put a price on carbon emission and let the market respond. If politicians pretend this can be done without pain, it will probably result in another 5 to 10 years of pretending to take actions.
Alex captured her hands and forced her to drop the potatoes.
Apple catches the hand and something drops the potatoes.
I didn't mean to eavesdrop on your conversation.
I did you drop it by conversations.
I would never feed my dog with commercial dog food.
I will never feed my dog to eat commercial dog food.
The way of looking at something depends on your situation.
The way you look at something depends on your situations.
I look for the day when a billion planets are populated with a billion people each.
I look for the day when billion planets are populated with billion people each.
You're the best advertising executive this company has ever had.
This is the best advertising executive that companies that ever had.
Newspapers around the world are reporting the stories of the president.
Newspapers around the world are reporting the condition of government.
Will those happy days ever be forgotten by you?
It is happy day is forgotten by you.
Does the government in your countries help families that need help?
That government in the country has the family that need help.
The topic for discussion is usually related to the topic for a speech.
The topic in relation that only relation the topic you hear. The image declines the monthly rainfall in Mariana. It also provides information about different categories, such as the rainfall in January, February, and March in 2015. As can be seen from the image, the upper contributes the highest, which is 9 millimeter. On the other hand, the outer contributes the lowest, which is 0 millimeter. In conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong fashion figures has significant impact on the July and August and September. The topic describes the differences between male and female. It also provides information about different categories such as the male and female in Australia, Switzerland, and Ireland. As can be seen from the image, the male contributes the most, which is over 80%. On the other hand, the female contributes the least, which is 30%. In conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong fashion figures has significant impact on the UK and New Zealand and USA. The image describes the Australian rainfall analysis. It also provides information about different categories such as the rainfall in millimeter. As can be seen from the image, the 0 millimeter contributes the largest, which is white. On the other hand, the 400 millimeter contributes the smallest, which is purple. In addition, in conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong fashion figures has significant impact on the 3 millimeter and 200 millimeter. The image describes the direction of migration in Europe. As can be seen in conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong facts and figures has significant impact on the yellow and breeding and non-breeding and resident. As can be seen from the image, there are also other categories such as the migration routes and other routes. As can be seen from the image, there are also other categories such as the yellow and red. In conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong facts and figures has significant impact on the direction of migration in Europe. Breeding and resident and migration route and other routes. The image describes the process of organizational characteristics. It also provides different processes such as the innovation strategy and organization innovation culture. As can be seen from the image, the process starts with organizational strategy and ends with learning, feedback, and interaction. In addition, there are also other steps such as the environmental and evolution and selection. In conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong facts and figures has significant impact on the operating environment. The image describes the Australian retail sale. It also provides information about different categories such as the percentage of on sale March 2015. As can be seen from the image, the New South Wales contributes the most, which is 35%. On the other hand, the tax contributes the least, which is 1%. In conclusion, it can be said that the image with strong facts and figures has significant impact on the VIC and QLD and SA and WA. WA.
British Columbia is the third largest Canadian province, both in area and population. It is nearly 1.5 times as large as Texas and extends 100 miles north from the United States border. It includes Canada's entire west coast and the islands just off the coast. Most of British Columbia is mountainous, with long rugged ranges running north and south. Even the coastal islands are the remains of a mountain range that existed thousands of years ago. During the last ice age, This range was scored by glaciers until most of it was beneath the sea. Its peaks now show as islands scattered along the coast. The southwestern coastal region has a humid, mild marine climate. Sea winds that blow inland from the west are warmed by a current of warm water that flows through the Pacific Ocean. As a result, winter temperatures average above freezing and summers are mild. These warm western winds also carry moisture from the ocean. Inland from the coast, the winds from the Pacific meet the mountain barriers of the coastal ranges and the Rocky Mountains. As they rise across the mountains, the winds are cooled and their moisture begins to fall as rain. On some of the western slopes, almost 200 inches of rainfall each year. More than half of British Columbia is heavily forested. On mountain slopes that receive plentiful rainfall, huge Douglas firs rise in towering columns. These forest giants often grow to be as much as 300 feet tall, with diameters up to 10 feet. More lumber is produced from these trees than from any other kind of tree in North America. Hemlock, red cedar, and balsam fir are among the other trees found in British Columbia.
The topic which is significantly highlighted in the lecture is Colombia. According to the lecture, the speaker denotes that it is 100 north of America and Colombia is not new. Firstly, the speaker mentions that it took 1,000 years ago, the wetter season warm water in Pacific Ocean. Secondly, he also talked about the wind bring moisture from ocean and it had plenty rainfall. In conclusion, it can be said that any kind of tree can be seen in North America.
I know you're anxious to get your permits and get started, but there are just a few things I'd like to mention that might help you avoid trouble during your stay. First of all, make sure you carry adequate water. You'll need it if you're hiking, especially in this heat. A good rule of thumb is to bring 1 gallon per person per day this time of year. Don't try to rely on the park's natural springs to supply all your water needs. And please, do not use soap in the springs. It's your responsibility to protect the park's natural features. For those of you staying beyond the weekend, make sure that you set up camp well away from dry creek beds. We may get some heavy rainfall, and those creek beds could quickly become filled with water, and you and all your equipment might end up washed downstream. When you pick up your permits, you'll also get a Park Services booklet. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the hiking trails. They vary in length, of course, but most of them are under 5 miles, relatively easy day hikes. Remember, if you're hiking solo, make sure you let someone know you're going and when they can expect you back. And for your own safety, we recommend that you not climb rock faces. A lot of the rock throughout the park is very unstable. One final word. Watch out for poisonous snakes. Rattlesnake activity is at its peak this time of year, especially at night. For your own good, we recommend wearing protective clothing and carry a flashlight after dark.
The topic which is significantly highlighted in the lecture is hiking. According to the lecture, the speaker denotes that to get permits there are a few things many helpful. Firstly, the speaker mentions that a good 1 gallon per person per day, that is water. Secondly, he also talked about do not use soft drink, it destroys protected natural feature. In conclusion, it can be said that you pick up equipment and you know about hiking trail and not climbing rock you requirement, and especially at night you should worry in protecting roaming.
Mary Mallon, better known as Typhoid Mary, was the first person in the United States identified as an asymptomatic carrier of the pathogen associated with typhoid fever. She was presumed to have infected 51 people, 3 of whom died over the course of her career as a cook. She was twice forcibly isolated by public health authorities and died after a total of nearly 3 decades in isolation. From 1900 to 1907, Mallon worked as a cook in the New York City area for 7 families. In 1900, she worked in Mamaroneck, New York, where, within 2 weeks of her employment, residents developed typhoid fever. In 1901, she moved to Manhattan, where members of the family for whom she worked developed fevers and diarrhea, and the laundress died. Mallon then went to work for a lawyer. She left after 7 of the 8 people in that household became ill. In 1906, she took a position in Oyster Bay, Long Island, and within 2 weeks, 10 of the 11 family members were hospitalized with typhoid. She changed jobs again, and similar occurrences happened in 3 more households. She worked as a cook for the family of a wealthy New York banker, Charles Henry Warren. When the Warrens rented a house in Oyster Bay for the summer of 1906, Mallon went along too. From August 27th to September 3rd, 6 of the 11 people in the family came down with typhoid fever. The disease at the time was unusual in Oyster Bay, according to 3 medical doctors who practiced there.
The topic which is significantly highlighted in the lecture is Mary Mallon, or better known Typhoid Mary. According to the lecture, the topic which is significantly highlighted in the lecture is Mary Mallon, is better known Typhoid Mary. According to the lecture, the speaker denotes that he is associated with typhoid fever and infected 31 people, isolated by public community and dead after 3 decades. In 1900, she worked in New York and residents get in typhoid fever. Secondly, in 1901, she worked in the Manhattan and some people died. In conclusion, it can be said that Mary went to the work New York banker and sick and people get typhoid fever. New York. She changed her job again and worked for New York banker. 6 of 7 people get typhoid fever. In 1906, she goes to Oyster Bay.
If you started your day with a cup of coffee, most likely at least some of the beans came from Vietnam. In 20 years, Vietnam has gone from producing a mere fraction of world coffee to being the world's 2nd largest producer, after Brazil. Technology has played a key role in the industry's staggering growth, from high-tech irrigation systems to text message updates of global bean prices from London and New York.
Now, all the coffee farmers check the price of coffee beans on the London market, on the internet, or on our mobile phones.
Coffee farming has come a long way since the French first introduced the bean to Vietnam more than a century ago. Last year, Vietnam exported nearly 2 million tons of coffee, worth about $4 billion. And one local company, Trung Nguyen, is brewing a global takeover.
I don't just believe in Vietnamese coffee, I believe in our strategy. We're building up our team, we're realizing our plans, and soon we won't care who our competitors are, including Starbucks. We will surpass them.
Trung Nguyen plans to take Vietnamese-style coffee, which is brewed in individual drip filters, to the United States. which he sees as a direct retaliation after U.S. giant Starbucks opened a store in Ho Chi Minh City in February. Many people here say Starbucks' coffee can't compete with the local brew.
About a month ago, I tried Starbucks, but I must say I prefer Vietnamese coffee with milk and ice. It's much better than Starbucks.
Coffee consumption has stagnated in the West, but it's rising fast in Asia. And with a thriving local cafe scene and no tax on coffee exports, Vietnam is well placed to be at the forefront of the coffee revolution.
The topic which is significantly highlighted in the lecture is Vietnam coffee. According to the lecture, the speaker denotes that in 2000 Vietnam is second largest producer after Brazil. Secondly, he also talked about own coffee farmer, check the coffee price through mobile phones. In conclusion, it can be said that many people say Vietnam coffee is better than Starbucks and Vietnam is well placed to be the forefront in coffee industry. Last year, 2 million ton of last year 2 million ton last year 2 million ton last year 2 million tons of coffee. Two million tons of coffee is exported.
What do we call the last game in a sporting competition, which decide the champion?
The semi-final. The semi-final.
What is a series of events that happen in your mind while you are sleeping?
The dream. The dream. The dream. The dream.
What is a violent conflict between two or more countries?
The war. The war.
What is a person belongs to an organization called?
The member. The member.
A disease or accident which ends in death.
Not sure.
Whenever a person goes to an interview, would he be in an enthusiastic mood or sad mood?
Enthusiastic mood.
What do you call the document that gives details about your qualification and work experience?
Autobiography. Autobiography.
How many years are in a century?
365. 100.
A person who is active, lively and enjoys the company of others.
Not sure. 100. 100.
What special document do most people carry during international travels?
The newspaper and magazine.
It seems like only yesterday that I was sitting where you are, just finishing my first year of medical school, and wondering if I'd ever get a chance to use all my new knowledge on a real live patient. Well, I have good news for you. You don't have to wait until your third or fourth year of medical school to get some hands-on experience. The dean has invited me here to tell you about the university's Rural Opportunities Program. If you enroll in this program, you can have the opportunity this summer, after your first year of medical school, to spend from 4 to 6 weeks observing and assisting a real physician, like me, in a small rural community. You won't have to compete with other students for time and attention, and you can see what life as a country doctor is really like. The program was designed to encourage medical students like yourselves to consider careers in rural communities that are still understaffed. It seems that medical students are afraid to go into rural family practice for 2 reasons. First, they don't know much about it. And second, specialists in the cities usually make more money. But on the upside, in rural practice, doctors can really get to know their patients and be respected members of the community. I participated in the program when it first started and spent 6 weeks in a small rural town. Let me tell you, it was really great. I got to work with real patients. I watched the birth of a child, assisted an accident victim, and had lots of really practical hands-on experience, all in one summer. And to my surprise, I found that country life has a lot to offer that city life doesn't. No pollution or traffic jams, for instance. My experience made me want to work where I'm needed and appreciated. I don't miss the city at all.
To many people, the vast continent of Australia seems underpopulated with its current population of 17 million people. But this image is misleading. Much of the continent is inhospitable to humans, and the amount of agricultural land and available water is small compared with the total land area. Moreover, according to the Population Issues Committee of the National Population Council, NPC, there is a serious mismatch between distributions of available water supply and the population. Water supply is subject to high levels of seasonal and year-to-year variability. The land is severely degraded, the soils thin and vulnerable to depletion. 1992, p. 41. Additionally, many species in Australia have become extinct or are threatened by the expansion of human activities in their habitats. Australia has a high population growth rate compared with other high-income nations, mainly because of its high level of immigration. Although birth rates are below replacement level, there is also a natural increase in population levels. This is due to the lag effect of increases in population a generation ago, which resulted in increased numbers of women of childbearing age. There is very little agreement among scientists as to how many people Australia can support, and even less about what environmental impact high levels of population would have. Some biologists, geographers and environmentalists argue that Australia already has more people that the environment can cope with, and that a sustainable population level would be more like 10 million people.
If you think about light bulbs, they're an enormous infrastructure. They're in every building in the world, more or less. They have kind of a privileged position above us, around us. They can see, if you think about it, most parts of any room. The kind of key was to say, well, what if we consider a light bulb not to be a light bulb, but actually to be a digital projector? It just happens to be really low resolution. In fact, it's a 1 by 1 pixel digital projector. Turn on the wall switch, and a giant pixel comes out and paints your room. Okay, well, that's ludicrous, but what if you put a higher resolution projector inside that same familiar glass bulb? Well, now you have a device that can illuminate if you turn on all the pixels the same color. You still have a light bulb in the usual sense. But if you turn on the pixels different amounts and different colors, then you're kind of projecting information out into the world. And if at the same time that you're doing that, you put a little tiny camera inside the bulb, then not only is information flowing out of the glass, but you're collecting optical information. So screw one of those into every one of these fixtures, and suddenly you have a means, potentially, to put display and interaction everywhere throughout the world.
South Korea's LG Electronics is banking on its new smart fridge, becoming an essential component of kitchens around the world. The smart fridge is a technological marvel compared to fridges of the past. It boasts a food management system that maintains a list of the food it is storing. It also records the expiry dates of the foods and sends out an alert via Wi-Fi when that date has been reached. The information can be accessed via a smartphone by consumers as they shop in grocery stores, allowing them to make informed decisions about food purchases. LG adds that its fridge can also suggest healthy recipes based on what it knows is inside.
Some ecotourism offers visitors close encounters with different species, but new research suggests that these activities may not be so great for the animals. Researchers tagged stingrays in Stingray City in the Cayman Islands to monitor their movements and behavior. Compared to stingrays outside of the tourism area, those in Stingray City switched their activity patterns from night to day when tourists handed out food, and mated year-round instead of seasonally. The stingrays also had more bite marks, which suggests increased aggression towards one another. The study is in the journal PLOS ONE. Past research has found increased stress and more intra- and interspecies aggression among animals that have been fed by humans. Interactive tourism is a growing business, but researchers say that more study is needed to ensure the health and safety of humans and animals alike. Ecotourism may be good for a given species as humans become engaged in its survival, but for the individual members of that species tasked with dealing with people, it may not be a walk in the park.
Ladybugs love to snack on aphids and other pests, so people began importing an Asian species called the harlequin ladybird as natural pest control. But in their new environments, the harlequins wiped out native ladybugs, and they have their parasites to thank. That's according to research in the journal Science. A parasite called Microsporidia lies dormant in the circulatory systems of harlequin ladybirds. But when scientists injected Microsporidia into a common European ladybug species, the insects died within 2 weeks. When the ladybugs were injected with dead Microsporidia or a control substance, most survived. Harlequin ladybirds' immune systems, on the other hand, have learned to deal with Microsporidia, which lets the insects use them as biological weapons, because one way ladybugs compete is by consuming the eggs and larvae of rival species. When European ladybug species eat the harlequin ladybird eggs and larvae, they also consume the Microsporidia and die. The discovery demonstrates an important role of immunity in evolutionary selection, and it shows that there are many ways to lose a food fight.
We're not running out of oil. The first thing one can say with absolute confidence is that we're not about to run out of oil. We're definitely not. But what we are approaching is the end of the first half. And this is one way to describe it. And this chapter in history lasted about 150 years since the first oil was produced. And we're coming to the end of that. And you have to find oil before you can produce it. And when we look back in history, we can find that the peak of discovery was in 1964. And that the discovery of oil has been falling ever since, relentlessly. And it's been falling despite a worldwide search, always aimed at the biggest and best prospects. No one's looking for the smallest and the worst, the biggest and the best. It's been falling despite amazing technological and geological advances. We understand this business so much more than we did. And finally, it's been falling despite a very happy economic environment whereby most of the cost of exploration is written off against tax. So I would say, in view of all of those incentives and all of those benefits, if discovery has actually been falling relentlessly, there is no good reason to think that this trend is going to change direction. So, in other words, we've passed the peak.
So what influences consumers in different parts of the world? Many factors affect how we as individuals and societies live, buy, and consume. And it should be readily apparent that culture has a profound impact on the way consumers perceive themselves, the products they buy and consume, and the processes by which those products should be purchased, and the organizations that sell those products.
I should say one more thing about theory. It's great to discover theory, but you have to lose a lot. And you may have noticed, or maybe you didn't, how much you lose. Partly you don't notice it much because here at the university everybody's dedicated to theory. And what's left out is perception, because you use your mind, not your eyes. Skill, you're not supposed to have any particular sort of bodily kind of skills. There's a kind of mental thing, but let's not call that skill. I'm just calling skill the way you cope with everyday stuff that you use and so forth. Intuition, it's not fair to have intuition. You can have intuition, but it's not theory. It's not something that everybody has to believe until you can put it into language and argue for it. Gets rid of emotions, the body, tradition.
I have chronic pain, and at times this is severe, but this is managed with opiates. I know the general public has a very perverted view of opiates because they think street addiction, heroin, drug smugglers. However, if prescribed correctly by doctors in the right dose for your height and weight, and you manage it well yourself, I haven't increased my dose of 80 milligrams of morphine in the last 18 years. So that's a fairly good illustration that, no, you don't double it every 10 minutes the way the general public think. And also it's very well looked after by the government. I have to present myself to my GPs, who all get to know me very well, every 30 days, and they have to phone Canberra to have authorisation, and I get my monthly dose of opiates to keep me going for the next lot.
It's been suggested that we get rid of the study of humanities altogether. Some say studying subjects like history, philosophy, politics, literature, anthropology, and so on has no intrinsic value. And why should we waste time and energy on courses of study that won't lead directly to a cut-and-dried career? They say that what the world needs now is specialists, not generalists. Well, I have to say I couldn't disagree more. Of course we want to produce well-informed, literate, highly functioning citizens who make solid contributions to society. That's an idea that still holds sway, but that's not the reason that I believe studying the humanities is valuable. People who study a breadth of topics and who have a diverse range of interests are actually better problem solvers. This broad education means they can approach an issue
When you first examine something under a microscope, say a leaf from a plant, you're amazed at how much detail there is, and it's detail that you simply cannot see without magnification. And what you can see with the naked eye becomes suddenly huge under the lens. How big everything looks is astonishing, but it's also amazingly intricate. Suddenly, it's as if another world has opened up in front of your eyes, and you think, hey, I hadn't realized that something so small, so tiny, could be so
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Tech. I'm Larry Greenmeyer. Got a minute? Our skin tells us about our surroundings by detecting temperature, pressure, and other external conditions. If a pot handle is too hot to touch, we can feel this heat before burning our hand. Robots may someday have this protection too. A team of researchers at the University of California, Berkeley has developed a large area sensor network integrated into a thin plastic film that acts like an electronic skin. They demonstrated the concept with an e-skin sample about the size of a postage stamp that lights up in the specific places it's touched. The work is in the journal Nature Materials. The harder the e-skin gets pressed, the brighter the light. The researchers envisioned that flesh and blood users could have an e-skin smart bandage that monitors wounds. A large sheet of the material covering the wall of a room could even operate like a display screen, and a robot with such a surface could more effectively interact with its environment. Of course, we don't want our robots to be too sensitive. Then they might balk at cleaning up nuclear waste or spending years at a time alone on Mars.
I've still got the greatest enthusiasm and confidence in the
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Earth. I'm David Biello. Your minute begins now. On a visit to the Tampa area way back when, I enjoyed a stinging reminder that not all little red ants are benign. Introduced fire ants in the U.S. South are just one example of how ants from one region can set up colonies in another. South American so-called crazy ants now damage electrical equipment in the U.S., and super colonies of Argentine ants are all over Europe. To gauge such expansions, scientists, including Scientific American contributor Rob Dunn, tried to track introduced ant species in the Netherlands, New Zealand, and the U.S. They found that some 252 ant species have infiltrated the three places, mostly accidentally, for example in shipping containers full of fruit or wood. The researchers think their official count is low. They estimate the true number at nearly 1,000 species, and most can make a permanent home on new shores thanks to coming from nearby, climatically similar regions. The research appeared in the journal Biology Letters. Expanding their empires may be good news for ants, but maybe not for humans, as I learned all too painfully. Your minute is up. For Scientific American's
Sustainable development is not easy. It is an unavoidable responsibility. Create a playlist of your favorite music to help you relax in difficult situations. Read the first section before the next meeting. This is an integrated course with several elements.